Generational differences in racism. The main essential question that my project focuses on is how do distinct generations of Americans, both white and people of color, spanning from baby boomers to Gen Z, perceive the nature of race and racism differently? To offer an alternate perspective for those who believe that America has mostly maintained continuity when it comes to racism, has anything really changed between generations? Is Gen Z just as racist as baby boomers? These questions are raised by the authors of both The White Card and Fairview through inclusion of characters from a variety of generations. Between some characters, the perceptions of race of these distinct generations differ and often clash. However, others' characterizations disprove this generational difference and display the continuity of racism in the United States. To compare and contrast the views of characters from divergent age groups, I create an art piece visually portraying the perspectives of a few select individuals from the plays. Here is my project. My artwork consists of a family tree with the oldest individuals on top and the youngest below. The tree itself symbolizes the sturdy systematic racism present in the United States, with its roots firmly planted into the soil. The tree has been alive for many generations and embodies all individuals in the nation. I chose to include a few characters representing a total of 4 age groups to demonstrate the generational change that my central question inquires about. Beside each character on the tree, I include their personal experience with racism, but also reference to what each generation mostly thinks as a whole. So what are the differences between each generation? Let's start with Generation Z. Younger generations have a more modernized mindset and have been engaging more in activism movements against racism due to the increasing popularity of groups such as BLM and SURJ. In fact, in a survey consisting of about 39,000 Generation Z adolescents, about 90% of the respondents claimed to support the Black Lives Matter movement. I demonstrated this common passion in the bottom right corner of my drawing, showing the common passion towards activism among adolescents. I also included Charles as he is a major motivation for Alex to pursue social justice. Alex sees his own father as a part of America's racist history and wants to remove that. Other Generation Z individuals relate to this, as it is common for adolescents to have racist parents or adults in their lives that they do not necessarily agree with. Another young character that I chose to include is Keisha, who is determined to protest against unjust rules even those not related to race. She says in her first monologue, "I'm spending my whole entire life waiting for punishment, and what kind of life is that? Like, there has to be more to life than that, doesn't there?" Keisha's character hates sitting around waiting for other people to determine her path, resulting in her being the one out of all of the black characters in the play to finally break the fourth wall and become aware of the white audience. This symbolizes younger people of color being exposed to systematic racism present in the US and wanting to stand up against it. In a PBS interview with Drury herself, the interviewer asks if Keisha's breaking of the fourth wall is generational commentary, and she answers yes. Keisha and Alex are newer to this world and therefore are more likely to rise up against what they think is wrong. In my artwork, I portray this rebellion as breaking out of a birdcage, alluding to the birdcage metaphor mentioned in D'Angelo's White Fragility. The bird is Keisha, the cage represents racism, and the feathers that she lost while trying to escape shows how hard it is to battle racism. The people of color of Generation X are represented by Charlotte's character in The White Card. As a black female artist, Charlotte has obviously been through many injustices and acts of racism herself. She actively works to create African American artwork to bring attention to brutality and the mistreatment towards black people in the US. I show this in my drawing by displaying Charlotte painting on a white canvas with black paint. She is shining a light on black history, not just leaving canvases white for white people to paint their perspectives over. As Charlotte explains, art is not going to change the laws, but it might make apparent something we didn't see about how we all grew up. At least that's what I hope for my own work. Her artwork not only shows the suffering of black people as Charles sees it, but also recalls the history and context behind the struggles. However, in my project, her skin is covered with white paint, showing that she is being held back by white power and is suffering directly from white supremacy. Through Charlotte's character, Rankin shows that middle-generation people of color do recall traditional American racism and is trying hard to preserve that history so that it is not forgotten by newer generations, such as Gen Z. Another generation of Americans present in Fairview is the Millennials, represented by Suze, Jimbo, and Mac, who give commentary on the black family's actions on stage and share their perspectives of race. I decided to focus on Suze's character in my art as she has a peculiar view of race influenced by her previous experience with a black mammy when she was a child. Similar to Charlotte, Suze was exposed to more traditional US racism when she was younger. Mammies were much more popular during Suze's childhood than in the 21st century when Keisha and Alex were children. She grew up heavily influenced by her servant girl Mabel and her racist parents. Suze had always wanted to be with black individuals such as Mabel without being criticized by other white people. This past experience, and the new modernized thinking that arose while she was growing up, ultimately led to her becoming a woke liberal who understands the racist past. According to the Time Series study conducted by the American National Election Studies in 2016, among whites, millennials are more likely than boomers, for example, to perceive that government is responsible for racial inequalities, along with other concerns regarding institutional racism. Millennials like Suze are starting to become less conservative and see the beginnings of social change, and also still hold on traditional racist views from the past, more so than Generation Z. The final and oldest generation that my project touches upon is the baby boomers, represented by Charles of the White Card. Older adults, such as Charles, agree that Alex's fellow protesters are merely one-dimensional sophomoric activist friends, obviously holding different views on racism in America than the youth. Baby boomers, such as Charles, were born in the 1940s to 1960s and are extremely influenced by the racist past of the United States. They would obviously have more outdated views on the nature of race, for they have been exposed to racist tendencies of society for much longer. Boomers like Charles actually grew up in an environment where black people were segregated from white individuals, and acts of direct racism were tolerated and legalized. Several examples of events that Charles himself lived through as a child are displayed in my drawing, along with an eraser deleting past history. Although he tries to make the impression that America has progressed with him, contributing to that progress through his money, the traditionally racist views of the US are engraved into him. He is very well aware that he himself, as a white male, was part of the systematic racism present back in the day and in present day, and uses his privilege and money to hide this white guilt, buying artwork while completely erasing the history behind them. Boomers nowadays generally still hold traditional conservative views from when they were younger, and after seeing outdated activism movements such as the I Have a Dream speech and the end of segregation, believe that America has progressed and is not as racist as before. To back up these thoughts mentioned so far, here are some statistics from 2016 American National Elections Survey, showing that younger generations tended to yield lower scores in racial resentment and institutional discrimination index than those who are older. If Gen Z was added to these graphs, they would probably score even lower than the millennials. Here are some more graphs that show that Gen Z is more likely to support BLM than older generations, and older generations are more likely to support the police. Now, to speak a little bit about the continuity in the US, are generations really all that different when it comes to racism? Through the characters of Jimbo and Mac, Drury demonstrates in Fairview that not all younger individuals are anti-racist and significantly better people than the baby boomers were. Jimbo and Mac are explicitly racist throughout Act 2 and 3 of Fairview, mocking a variety of races and using numerous stereotypes. This buds another question from my main essential question. Are we as Americans really advancing towards opposing racism, or are generations such as millennials just as racist as their parents are? This is apparent in the White Card as well, but is more debatable. Some see Alex as an innocent teenager fighting for social justice, while others see him as an illegitimate anti-racist motivated solely by rage towards his parents. If the reader believes in the latter, they likely agree with the fact that racism is continuous throughout generations. I demonstrate this point of view by tying a red string to Charles, Suze, and Alex, as no matter what they appear to be on the surface, they are still tied to the racist roots of America and benefit from their white privilege. There are indeed general trends shown by statistics telling us that younger generations are starting to oppose racism more, but it should be noted that there are still lots of individuals who defy these trends. Here is my full project again, and I hope you enjoyed.